Do you find yourself crying at most doctor appointments, worrying that the doctors and nurses aren't believing you?
The guy is a drug addict trying to score painkillers.
But he refused drugs.
Or worse, are judging you?
My bad. He is a very clever drug addict.
Do you completely avoid ER and doctor visits to the point where it might be a health issue in the future?
Just a flesh wound.
It's called medical trauma, and we're gonna look into that. Well, everyone goes through that, right? No, they don't. It's very common for us with chronic illness, but that's because we deal with gaslighting on a constant basis from doctors and nurses, which isn't normal for most people.
We are your doctors, deal with it.
Yeah, we're your doctors.
I'm sure most of you remember when you were healthy, you didn't really fear going to the doctor's office at all. In fact, I'm sure it was just a boring, normal thing you did every once in a blue moon. Okay, so what exactly then can cause medical trauma, I hear you saying?
It was an awful, incompetent doctor.
Pretty basic stuff for us with chronic illness, things like invalidating doctors, invasive tests, surgeries and harsh procedures, being in constant flare-up mode for weeks or months, excessive worry about the progression of your condition, abusive caregivers.
Did I just walk in on you mocking an innocent patient?
Yes.
I've never felt closer to you.
And emotional abuse from invalidating doctors, healthcare professionals of all kinds, nurses, scheduling people, and your family.
You're making it up.
Enough of all these things will really traumatize a person.
No wonder you're upset.
So the two main ways that people show their trauma is either through PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or cPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Well, let me tell you. The classic post-traumatic stress disorder is something that happens because of a short-lived trauma. So what I mean by that is a car accident, a surgery where something went wrong. A very sudden traumatic event. Whereas complex PTSD is what most of us with chronic illness end up with. Complex PTSD stems from long-term or repeated exposure to a trauma in which the victim has like a limited belief that it will ever end.
It never ends.
So some examples of things that cause cPTSD are being the victim of child abuse, being the victim of domestic abuse, either physical or emotional. It doesn't have to be just physical to have cPTSD from it. Wartime conditions, and of course, living with a severe chronic illness. So what we go through constantly with the not feeling believed, the not even being believed, the told that it's in our heads, all this stuff that's constantly degrading us and just belittling us and our condition.
What were the symptoms?
So the symptoms for PTSD are nightmares, flashbacks, hyperarousal / easily startled, paranoia, emotional outbursts, etc. The symptoms for complex PTSD are all of the above, plus you also get a really distorted worldview of yourself, your perpetrators, your values, your faith, etc., in really an attempt to keep thinking that the world is good or safe.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
This can result in just unmanaged sadness, constant self-hate, or being chronically numb.
Did you skip symptoms?
So some other complex PTSD symptoms are difficulty with emotional regulation, difficulty with your self-perception, difficulty with relationships, disassociation, and kind of a skewed perception of the world and what's good and bad.
Make him crazy. He just does what he does because he loves me too much.
So, alright, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I'm just gonna talk about it anyway. So my first marriage, I was actually in an extremely emotionally abusive marriage. Very manipulative, classic narcissistic abuser. I didn't know what that was at the time, and I didn't know how to manage it, how to deal with it, and I was with this person for about 12 years total. I didn't have a lot of experience, and I didn't know how to defend myself from this, your worldview really does get completely skewed. You really do blame yourself for everything. You really do think no one will ever believe you. It is extremely traumatic. And when I finally did manage to escape that marriage, it literally was an escape too. I didn't realize how badly I had been affected by it. I didn't realize living with that for that long had affected me so much until I started having flashback nightmares, until I started panicking if I was anywhere near an area where he worked, he used to work, he lived, his parents lived, or just someone was driving by that looked similar or the car looked similar, just having panic attacks where I felt like my heart was racing and I couldn't breathe. Eventually, I was encouraged by my doctors and my family to seek counseling for this, and much to my surprise, it turned out I did have complex PTSD because of my marriage. I never thought I had it. I want to be clear about this. You may think you don't have it, but if all of these sound familiar, if all of these are lining up, you know, you probably do. And it only gets worse, trust me. It only gets worse until you talk it through with someone and you start learning coping mechanisms to avoid what causes your body to freak out. I don't want to use the word trigger because that means something totally different nowadays, but it is a trigger. You learn how to avoid the triggers that cause your body to just freak out, and it takes a while, and it's worth it. Because if you don't, it takes over your life. It really does. It makes you have weird rules and routines and ways of thinking about things, and where you focus all your attention just to feel safe is...
Too much talking, 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 too much talking.
So I don't know if I should have added that. I don't know if I'm going to keep that in the video or not because it is very personal, but I know there are a ton of other people who have also been through this, and I know they feel like no one believes them, and they feel like they're the crazy one for thinking that because that's what society tells them, but it's not true. And it can even cause chronic illness. It can cause your body to give out.
How did you manage it?
So this brings me to my tips on managing your cPTSD or PTSD. So number one, as I just said, see a therapist. See a therapist that is specialized in counseling for this. Make sure it's somebody you trust. If you go see a therapist and they are rude or you're just not clicking, find another one. They don't care.
Are there any other doctors here?
Another really good thing you can do is do your best to develop a support system around you. So find the friends that believed you. Find the family that believed you. Have a support system that you are able to tell them what you're feeling and what you're going through, and they're not going to judge you for this. Another option for a support system is to join online support groups. So places like Facebook have specific groups specifically for chronic illness people, people who've been through certain types of abuse, people who are victims of narcissists. There are groups for everything, and you just got to kind of search them out, find them, try them out. Not all of them are good. You'll find a couple that will click. Another thing that really helps is finding creative activities to kind of take up the space in your brain that's trying to freak out. So things like puzzles, coloring, watching nostalgic videos, things like that. Just being creative really helps. Now, it might be possible, it might not, but if you can get your loved ones or your family to go to support groups based on your condition, like if your issue is with chronic illness, see if you can get your loved ones to go to a caregiver support group, or maybe even have them go to therapy. They have somewhere to vent that way, and they won't take it out on you, because caregiver fatigue is a real thing, and encouraging them to have an outlet for that isn't you is very healthy. Not all of them will do it. All you can do is suggest it. Another thing that's super helpful is doing low impact activity if you are able to. Just getting the blood flowing really helps your brain cope with this, really releases the endorphins, and can really help. So if you can without it hurting you, go for a walk, play with your dog, play with your kids, you know, do something fun and that gets the blood flowing a little bit. And my big tip is...
She didn't say that.
Yeah, she did.
A little weird because it's gonna seem too vague, but it's the thing that's helped me the most over the years. And that is to embrace joy as often as possible. So especially people that come from abuse type of situations, we almost feel like we don't deserve joy. And that is not true. We're scared to let ourselves enjoy something because we are so scared of it being ripped away. No, do the opposite. Find joy. Embrace joy as often as possible. If you like something, do it. If you want that shirt that's really cool and, you know, get it. Like, if you're having a good time, belly laugh and don't care if anyone looks at you funny. If you want to dance to some fun music, dance to it. Heck, if I'm feeling too bad, I find the 90s Saturday morning cartoons and I put that on and just laugh and pretend I'm a kid, and it's just so much fun. Embracing joy is one of the most healing things you can do for yourself because it teaches you to love yourself again, and we are meant to have joy.
Think about it.
Now, the next thing you can also do that I think would be the most helpful is watch this video on finding mentally healthy versus toxic people, because that will show you who you need to get closer to and who you need to get far away from. And you know what? If you could share this with some of your groups or friends that need it, please do. It would help me and them. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and keep on surviving.